In Monterrey, Nuevo León, Mexico, there is an industrial park designed specifically for Chinese companies investing in Mexico, called the North American Hofusan Industrial Park. This park is about 280 kilometers from the U.S. border in Texas, roughly a 4.5-hour drive. Recently, there has been a tense atmosphere in the park after the one-stop service platform for Chinese companies, North American Investment, was opened. An article titled How Trump's Tariffs Impact Trade Between China, the U.S., and Mexico was featured on the homepage. The article stated Trump's tariffs could increase the cost of vehicles and auto parts, which would raise the price of American-made cars. How to deal with a potential 25% blanket tariff imposed by U.S. President Trump on Mexico, as well as the true intentions and future actions behind Trump's tariffs on Mexico and Canada, have become the most worrying issues for many business owners in the park. Since U.S. President Trump's first term imposed tariffs on Chinese products, many Chinese companies have been looking for ways to bypass the tariffs and enter the U.S. market by changing the place of origin of their products. Especially after the pandemic greatly increased shipping costs, Chinese companies began rapidly shifting operations overseas, with Mexico becoming their primary choice. This is how the industrial park, tailored for Chinese companies, was created. The one-stop platform of the park states that Mexico has a unique geographical advantage. Not only is it close to the huge U.S. market, but Mexico is also one of the countries with the most free trade agreements in the world. Most importantly, it is a member of the North American Free Trade Agreement. The industrial park's introduction boldly states, Chinese products can smoothly enter the U.S. and the EU through Mexico. Is Mexico the next world factory? The chairman of the Hofusan Industrial Park, Hu Hai, once said, "Since 2022, our park and the city I'm in have been nearly fully occupied. Chinese companies are rushing in, fighting for factories and land." As of now, more than 30 Chinese companies have settled in the park, including construction equipment manufacturer Linggong Heavy Machinery, electric vehicle company BYD, home appliance company Hisense, solar panel producer Trina Solar, and furniture maker Minhua Furniture, among others. Due to high tariffs on Chinese-made products during Trump's first term, as well as the continuation of these tariffs under the Biden administration, these Chinese companies have come to Mexico to manufacture and assemble their products, labeling them as made in Mexico. The products are then sent to the U.S. with zero tariffs thanks to U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, or USMCA, that took effect in July 2020. Under this agreement, products made in Mexico that meet certain rules of origin can enter the U.S. tariff-free. This agreement clearly shows Chinese companies have found a loophole in tariff sanctions. In addition to avoiding potential delays in the shipping process, the wage levels of Mexican workers, which are comparable to those in China, make investing in Mexico a more profitable decision. However, since Mexico's manufacturing industry is not as developed as China's, companies still need to import more products from China to manufacture and export to the U.S. Nick Vallas, Director of Global Supply Chain Management at the USC Marshall School of Business, believes Mexico plays a huge role in supply chain restructuring and making supply chains more flexible and agile. He said that first, Mexico is close to the U.S. market. Second, there are historical geopolitical relations between Mexico and the U.S. with a friendly border. So considering the secondary and tertiary supplier networks, it makes sense for Mexico to play a key role in the U.S. supply chain. A recent report from consulting firm Kearney shows that from 2023 to 2024, China's container shipments to Mexico will increase by 60% compared to the previous year. Zenita, a company based in Oslo that analyzes air and sea freight markets, said in analysis that trade between China and Mexico is the fastest growing trade on planet Earth right now. Foreign direct investment, FDI, from China to Mexico has also significantly increased over the past 5 years. The automotive industry has long been a major driver of Chinese direct investment in Mexico. Since the mid-2010s, the automotive sector has accounted for about a third of China's investment in Mexico. However, this trend has intensified in recent years. According to analysis by research firm Rhodium Group, in 2023, Chinese companies invested $2.72 billion in the automotive sector, making up 72% of China's total investment in Mexico that year. This trend continued into the first half of 2024, with automotive industry investments accounting for 3/4 of China's total investment in Mexico. The rapid growth of trade between Mexico and China has raised concerns in the U.S. They believe Chinese companies are using the back door of the USMCA to continue exporting goods to the North American market. During his campaign, Trump stated he wanted to impose a 200% to 500% tariff on cars imported from Mexico, saying, "I don't want them to hurt our car companies." On February 1st, U.S. President Donald Trump announced a 25% tariff on imports from Mexico and Canada, effective February 4th. This means products entering the U.S. from Mexico will see a significant price increase. The day before the tariffs took effect, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum announced that she had reached an agreement with Trump to delay the tariffs for 30 days. For the Chinese companies that recently moved to Mexico, the possibility of Trump imposing tariffs on Mexico is a cause for concern. For Chinese companies that relocated to Mexico in the past 3 years to avoid U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods, this political move may mean they need to reconsider their supply chains once again. William Reinsch, director of the Strategic and International Studies Center in Washington, said that Chinese companies in Mexico face two challenges. First, the possibility of the 25% tariff being reinstated. Second, when the U.S. and Mexico renegotiate the North American Free Trade Agreement this year or next, President Trump will insist that Mexico cannot become a backdoor for Chinese imports. This could mean higher tariffs on goods produced by Chinese companies in Mexico. In either case, these Chinese companies are most likely to look for alternative supply chains. Gary Hufbauer, senior fellow at the Peterson Institute for International Economics, said he expects a 25% tariff to be reinstated, along with other demands from the U.S. Nick Vyas state that Chinese companies with factories in Mexico have become a pressing issue in U.S.-Mexico trade negotiations. He mentioned that China's investments in Mexico, both direct and indirect, have raised concerns about the authenticity of the Made in Mexico label. The question is whether products are truly manufactured in Mexico or simply assembled there. Vyas added that traceability and trade compliance will be key issues in the next generation of trade discussions. He believes that if necessary, Mexican President Sheinbaum may sacrifice the interests of these Chinese companies. Hufbauer from the Peterson Institute also agrees with this view. He said that Mexico will follow the U.S.'s lead and ultimately prohibit most new Chinese investment projects or mergers and acquisitions. Analysis suggests that the U.S. president's move to impose tariffs on imports from the U.S.'s three main trade partners, China, Mexico, and Canada, may not be solely economic. It could also be part of a broader strategy to launch a full counterattack against the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, which has already been engaging in undeclared war with the U.S. The White House issued a statement on February 1st saying, "Today's tariff announcement is necessary to hold China, Mexico, and Canada accountable for their promises to halt the flood of poisonous drugs into the United States." President Trump posted on his Truth Social platform saying, "This was done through the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, because of the major threat of illegal aliens and deadly drugs killing our citizens, including fentanyl." Fentanyl is a powerful synthetic opioid painkiller. It acts quickly, lasts for a short time, and is 50 times stronger than heroin and over 100 times stronger than morphine. Just a few grains of fentanyl can be lethal. Fentanyl has become the greatest threat to the U.S., causing more deaths annually than the Vietnam War. This is equivalent to one Boeing 737 crashing every day. Illegal fentanyl has severely damaged the foundation of American society and national security, creating a dire situation. On September 9, 2024, the Heritage Foundation released a research report titled "Holding China and Mexico Accountable for the U.S. Fentanyl Crisis," which stated that the U.S. fentanyl crisis directly originates from the Chinese Communist Party. In fact, most Americans are unaware that the CCP is actively funding, supporting, and promoting the deadliest drug threat in U.S. history. Former U.S. Vice President Dick Cheney's former Deputy National Security Advisor, Juan Guaido, claims that this is a chemical war waged by the CCP against American families and communities. This war has already severely disrupted and damaged the U.S. economy and social structure, as well as the future of the next generation. Report of the International Narcotics Control Board for 2023 states that China is the leading producer, accounting for 35% of the global manufacture in 2022, or 363.2 tons. According to data from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, China currently has 5,000 pharmaceutical production companies and more than 160,000 companies holding pharmaceutical operating licenses. China produces 40% of the world's chemicals, making it the largest chemical exporter and the world's largest producer and seller of laboratory synthesized drugs. Mexican criminal organizations source fentanyl or precursor materials from China, synthesize the precursors into fentanyl, and then smuggle it into the U.S. At times, they mix fentanyl with other drugs, press it into pills, and then smuggle these illicit fentanyl products into the U.S. In 2023, in an indictment against Joaquin Guzman's son, the leader of the Sinaloa cartel, U.S. officials estimated that $10 million worth of fentanyl precursors could generate profits up to 800 times the original investment. Illegal fentanyl trafficking is a form of economic warfare where the CCP aims to undermine the U.S. economy, diminish its workforce, and conduct a drug warfare strategy with limited resources. Every year, the CCP uses only 3 to 5 tons of fentanyl, worth less than $20 million. Yet it causes $1.5 trillion in economic losses and over 70,000 casualties, far exceeding the economic and human losses of the Vietnam War, where over 58,000 casualties and an economic loss of $686 billion, or roughly $950 billion today. From 2010 to 2019, the U.S. identified China as the primary source of illegal fentanyl, fentanyl-related substances, and production equipment. According to U.S. seizure data, illegal fentanyl in powder form was often mailed directly from China to the U.S. via international mail and courier services. During the early years of Trump's first term in 2016 and 2017, China accounted for 97% of the total fentanyl seized from mail shipments, which is at its peak. On December 1, 2018, President Trump met with Xi Jinping at the G20 summit in Buenos Aires, where Xi agreed to impose controls on all fentanyl-related chemicals. After May 2019, when China implemented full category control on all fentanyl-related substances, direct mail shipments saw significant reductions. Then Deputy Director of China National Narcotics Control Commission, Liu Yuejin, outlined several law enforcement steps, including investigating illegal fentanyl production bases, removing fentanyl and illegal substances from Internet pages, cutting off online communication and transaction channels for criminals, encouraging courier companies to require senders to register their real names and increase checks on international parcels, and forming specialized teams to investigate crimes involving the production and trafficking of fentanyl-related substances. Since then, trafficking methods have changed. Mexican transnational criminal organizations began sourcing large amounts of illegal fentanyl precursors from China to produce fentanyl for U.S. consumption. In early 2020, as the COVID-19 pandemic swept across China and cities were locked down, fentanyl became increasingly scarce in the U.S. Mexican fentanyl production stalled, supply decreased, and prices surged. Mexican drug traffickers complained, saying they were trying to get chemicals from China to Sinaloa. This supply chain relationship continues to this day. In August 2022, following House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, China officially announced it would suspend all anti-drug and law enforcement cooperation with the U.S. In November 2023, when Xi Jinping visited the U.S. and met with President Biden in San Francisco, China agreed to restart cooperation with the U.S. to combat fentanyl and other synthetic opioids, as well as the precursors entering the U.S. Even before the summit, China's National Narcotics Control Commission informed pharmaceutical companies across the country that during this sensitive period, they must monitor and enforce export controls on fentanyl precursor materials. As in 2019 and 2020, China also shut down some Chinese websites that were selling chemicals used for making illegal drugs to international criminal organizations. In return, the U.S. lifted sanctions on China's Forensic Research Institute, which had been involved in human rights abuses in Xinjiang. The issue, however, is that the CCP has the ability to control all sensitive online content, yet it turns a blind eye to cross-border fentanyl advertising, sales, and payments. The CCP can shut down high-energy production capacity, but it ignores the existence of illegal fentanyl manufacturing. A blockchain analysis company accurately predicted the amount of fentanyl seized at the U.S.-Mexico border based on cryptocurrency payments received by Chinese manufacturers for fentanyl precursors. Another supply chain analysis company further confirmed this conclusion. The company reviewed hundreds of thousands of data points related to the flow of fentanyl precursor products to Mexican drug cartels and confirmed to a special committee that China was the source of all supplies to these cartels. China's economic rise, especially the recent shift of Chinese production capacity to Mexico, has altered the relationship and status between China, the U.S., and Mexico. Mexico's president has previously admitted that Mexico's strategy towards China takes precedence over its strategy towards the U.S. In March 2023, former Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador even stated that Mexico does not have a fentanyl crisis. He said that fentanyl is the United States' own problem. It is not a widespread problem in Mexico. This attitude closely mirrors that of the CCP. In response to U.S. accusations, the CCP argues that in the 19th century, Britain smuggled opium into China, leading to the Opium Wars. The Chinese people suffered for a century, and the drug problem remains a historical trauma and deep pain for China. Therefore, China has always enforced strict controls and severe punishments against drugs. Therefore, China does not have a fentanyl problem, and the Chinese government claims that the U.S. fentanyl crisis is not caused by China. In addition to closely cooperating with criminal cartels in Mexico, China's infiltration of telecommunications networks is equally concerning. According to reports, Joaquin Saldana Otero, Huawei's Latin America Strategy and Marketing Director, stated that Huawei has been in Mexico for 20 years. The company's business includes infrastructure construction, telecommunications, computing, and cloud infrastructure, as well as surveillance and early warning systems. Huawei has become a major supplier of Mexico's telecommunications network. Its coverage of call ratios is expected to exceed 80%. Additionally, Mexico is one of the earliest starting points for the maritime Silk Road from China to America. From this information, it is clear that Mexico, the United States' backyard, has been heavily infiltrated by the CCP and has long been used as a forward base for launching unrestricted warfare against the U.S. President Trump clearly knows what he wants. What people see as a trade war is just the beginning. He is simply making important tasks that were not completed during his first term a priority in his second term. Mexico will need to make a choice, as the days of benefiting from both the U.S. and China will soon end. As for the future of Chinese companies in Mexico, it will depend on the industries they are involved in. Truly high-quality companies and products are welcome anywhere.